The 4 years of GST is over, but the problem still continues the same as it was there. Probably it has increased, not reduced. And Anish Bhai has rightly stated that so many settled position is now sought to be unsettled with the so many amendments being made every time. I must tell you there is a vast difference in income tax amendment and this, because as we all know that the GST consists of two portions. One is central tax and other is the state tax. And for levy of state tax, there is a separate state act. It is not contained in the central act. So when the amendments are proposed in the finance bill, the finance bill becomes a finance act. Thereafter, these amendments are informed to the various states. And then every state carries out the amendment in the respective state legislation. Thereafter, a notification is issued to implement that amendment. Except in some of the clauses which are stated, in some of the clauses the date is specified that this is effective from so and so date, as and when it is passed by all the state legislation and this. But in most of the clauses you will find that the amendments and date is not specified. So one should not feel like we used to feel in service tax or excise that the amendments become effective from the date of Finance Act becoming a finance bill. There will be a separate notification for effecting this. And our experience is like, February 18, the budget was presented. The notification making the provision effective came on 1st January 19. I mean, it is always, if you see in this year's also section 39, also they have brought in February 19, but they made it effective from 21. So what I want to point out is whatever we are discussing now, please do not think that it will be effective from the next day or from the date of the Finance Act. There, we always look for the separate notification or the finance bill from the date to be effective. With this small background, let me now start with my PPT presentation on this. Yeah, this is okay.
Yes, sir.
This I already mentioned to you. So these finance bill, when it becomes Finance Act, possibly we will have a separate notification, and that is likely to be from January 22. This has a lot of importance because some of the clauses which are going to be effective now in the proposed in the finance bill have a lot of ramification in the credit, and therefore we must look at that. It will be effective only from January 22. Now, first change which has been proposed is amendment in section 7, which defines supply. You all know, Anish Bhai mentioned about it, that principle of mutuality, whether the service tax can be levied on the supply made by club or association to the members of the club or not. This has been the cause of litigation. Department feels it can be levied, but we have been contesting, so tribunal consistently decided in our favor, High Court decided in our favor, and now matter was in Supreme Court. Finally, Supreme Court in Calcutta Club has held that the principle of mutuality will be effective, will be applicable to indirect tax also. There was no doubt that it will be applicable, but some of the deeming provisions which were made in service tax as well as in GST, that Supreme Court has very categorically held. Basically, if you look at the Calcutta Club judgment, para 32, 33 and 34, what they have said is that the amendment, 46 amendment made in the Constitution, particularly clause E of section 366, article 366, 29A, they says they have not addressed the question of taxing the supply made from club or association to the members. In as much as in they said that 46th amendment presumed that Young Men India, which is the main basis for the mutuality, has presumed that whenever supply is made by corporate, that means company which are registered or association which are registered, that is society and all that, that when it's supplying to a member is a taxable supply. That Supreme Court has said in para 32 and 33 was a mistake on the part of the committee which suggested the constitutional amendment. They said it is not so. The Young Men India never held that the corporate, if it's a corporate body like society which are registered or companies, we are when some of the club or association registered under the Companies Act also, a non-profit body. So that court has held it was a mistake, and therefore when they put it unincorporated an association of body of person, they said it is not curing the defect which was pointed out in Young Men India. And hence constitutional amendment is not proper. If you want, I mean, for the benefit of some of the members, one can read the para 32 and you kindly listen to it. It's very interesting para of the court has held. It can be seen from that 61st Law Commission report had observed that there cannot be said that there cannot be said to be any evasion of tax as a member of members club really takes his own goods and therefore did not seek to tax such goods. The framers of the 46th Amendment, though, thought otherwise and made it plain that they sought to bring into tax sales made by unincorporated club or an association of persons to their members, as it was thought that such transactions were not taxable. As such club or association in law has no separate existence from that of a member. This is 32, 33. Quite obviously, the statement of objects and reason has not read the case of Young Men's India Association in its correct perspective. This is the observation of Supreme Court in para 33. And that is why they say that the amendment which is proposed in clause 366(29)(e) has not cured the defect properly. Now kindly see when Supreme, and therefore it is held in service tax, whatever deeming provisions have been made, that unincorporated association body of individual is a distinct person than the members, is not curing the defect. Now in this background, whether these defect will get cured by these clauses, when Constitution has not cured the defect, can the lower legislation which is now trying to bring in will cure the defect? And that is a big question, because until you amend the Constitution, which you amended the Constitution, now court has held that the constitutional amendment is not proper. So can, when the Constitution does not do away with the mutuality concept, can this legislation do away with the mutuality concept is a big question, which again will take 25 years to decide. By the time we do not know how many of us will be there. But 1994 or 2003 onward, there is a club or association. The service tax is being levied. Now we are in 2021. We got some judgment. Now again we have amendment. Let us see how does it cure and not cure on this thing. But what is it trying to cure is the activity. What it says is now they have brought in section 7. That is section 7 defines the supply, and what it says is the activities or transaction by a person other than an individual to its member or vice versa for cash, deferred payment or otherwise valuable consideration is a supply. This is a definition made by activity transaction by a person other than an individual to its members. But person means it will be club, association, corporated, incorporated, everything to its members for cash, deferred payment or a valuable consideration. On this explanation, for the purpose of this clause, it is hereby clarified that notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time in force or any judgment, decree or any order of the court, tribunal, person and its member or constituent shall be deemed to be two separate person, activities or transaction inter se shall be deemed to take place from one such person to another person. Now this is again trying to do away with the judgment of Calcutta Club or the Young Men India Club. But the question is the principle of mutuality. If you are not able to cure in the constitution, can you cure by this legislation? Is of course, I will not comment on that. That is a big question. Notwithstanding that, you see, when an individual person takes certain call for payment of tax or non-payment of tax, and as a club or association, you can't have the same parallels. Because an individual, suppose I do not pay the tax because I feel that tax is not payable. The tax today I'm going to pay from my pocket or after collection, and after 5 years also I'll pay from my pocket. I will not be able to collect from there somebody. But in club or association, what happens? Like in society, suppose we are housing society. Today you don't pay on maintenance. Today you don't pay on transfer fees. The member after 5 years may sell the flat and go away. The new member comes in. Now, after 5 years, if the demand comes to you and you go and ask the new member, please sir, pay the tax, he will say, I was not there at that point of time. And therefore, collection of it becomes a difficult situation. And therefore, the whether to follow these young men, this Kolkata club or not in such club or association is again a big question mark. Nobody wants to follow that because every chairman and secretary feels that in my tenure, let me collect and pay. And that it seems in the given circumstances, club or association, that seems to be the better advice. Because if after 5 years the demand comes, then you are nowhere. From where will you pay? If you don't pay, the government detains your, attaches your bank account, and then you are not able to pay the normal water bill, municipal bill, and watchman security bill, and then you are in trouble. And therefore, friends, although it may be possible to argue that the Section 7 does not cure the defect properly, but it is at the same time, I would not recommend that you should follow that in your club or association, where one should find, although you should take a conservative view, collect and better pay. That's a better way of doing this activity rather than finding it out, because it has taken 12, 13, 17 years to decide this issue. For 17 years, nobody can go on receiving a demand and fighting for it. Half of the members may not be available after 17 years if the recovery is to be made. So that's a first amendment which has been proposed and this amendment is effective from 1st July 17. Let me tell you, but for this amendment, the whatever deeming provisions are made in service tax, the same deeming provision existed in the GST. Although in GST, in judgment of Kolkata Club, there is no mention of GST, but very same wording appear in GST. Therefore, the ratio of the judgment would squarely apply to GST. It is not that it will not be applicable. It will squarely apply to GST. But the question is now with this amendment, all that you can say if you are not paid is that the interest is not leviable because of the fact that you have now brought the amendment from January 22 onwards. I mean, this will be effective on the date of January 22. It will be passed and all that, but effective from July 17. And therefore, I will pay interest if any is payable from January 22, not earlier. Earlier, I was not liable to pay the tax at all. That's the first amendment. And this, of course, have been done away with. This is a deeming fiction which they have made. Supply of goods by an unincorporated association or body of person to member thereof, payment or otherwise for consideration will be a service. That is the amendment which they have made in this. This is another thing which is going to cause tremendous problems. You see, we right from the day when GST is implemented and online provisions have been implemented. If you look at the act itself, even today also, we are required to file 3 returns. GSTR 1 under section 37, wherein we declared the output supply, and GSTR 2, which is suspended in position, and GSTR 3. 2 and 3 are suspended. As against this, we are filing 3B. The purpose of GSTR 1 is when we declare the return, when we declare certain aspects in the return, the invoices are declared. The GST amount mentioned in the return is in the invoice is auto-populated to the account of the recipient. That means if you are saying that the goods are supplied to X person and you indicate the registration number of X person, then the X person will in his GSTR 2A will get the credit of that. That means that invoice will be reflected in him. This 2A feature came from October 17 onwards, and department always thought that what is not indicated in 2A, the credit will not be available. As I said, the supplier has to upload the invoice and then it comes in 2A. If you look at the original scheme of the return, GSTR 1, GSTR 2, and GSTR 3, which is essential to understand that position. The earlier scheme was that if GSTR 1, when my supplier files it, I will come to know from the GSTR 2A what is the credit available to me on a monthly basis. So suppose, as per my account, the credit is 50 lakh of rupees and GSTR 2 reflects 40 lakh of rupees. I may be able to reconcile both invoice wise or not reconcile, but on totality basis, I have come to conclusion that 10 lakh rupees is not reflected in GSTR 2. And if I have to find out, I can find out invoice wise which are 10 lakhs. Then I was allowed to upload that invoice in GSTR 2A and make my total to 50 lakh. In GSTR, current GSTR 2A, that facility is not there. You can't mention your invoice in the GSTR 2A. But originally, if you look at section 38, it says that you are able to correct, accept, reject, and all that it says, and upload certain differential invoices. The purpose of invoice uploading is that with those 10 lakhs invoice, when you upload, the supplier is asked a question. Whether have you made a supply? The X person says that, look, he has received supply from you on which GST credit is 2 lakh. What you have to say? And I was allowed to utilize the 10 lakh rupees also for the particular month. So suppose I am doing a reconciliation for August 17, and August 17 I upload the invoice for 10 lakh rupees. I was allowed to utilize the 10 lakhs. Now, when the question goes to supplier has to say either yes or no. Either supplier accepts that 2 lakh has been supplied to X person, or he says I have not supplied. If a supplier accepts, he will amend his GSTR 1 and include those in the supply. And if his supplier does not accept, then his amendment will remain. I will be asked to send a message again that, look, you have said that this supplier has made 2 lakh rupees supplies to you. He is not responding. That means your claim is bogus. And once your claim is bogus, you please revert back those 2 lakh rupees credit. And that was the original scheme of the credit. But then when we got 2A, we were not allowed to make any amendment in 2A. The 2A was only a statistical information. And I mean, there are lots of programs and software available which tries to match 2A with your purchase register. And you find there are a number of reasons by which the 2A and the entries are not matching. Number of hundreds of reasons are there. It's not time to discuss that. But what the department felt is difference between 2A and your account 3B is you are not entitled for a credit. And therefore you find plethora of notices have been issued that, look, 2A reflects 50 crores, 50 lakhs. You are taken in 3B 60 lakhs. Therefore 10 lakhs is the excess amount you are taken without giving which invoice, what supplier name. Now no details are mentioned. Just a notice is issued. The difference between 2A and 3B is so much, and you reverse the credit. Friends, on that such notices, I don't know, many of your clients also may have received such notices. But I must tell you that such notices are no legal basis. Because ultimately, section 16(2) specifies 4 conditions for availment of credit. And section 16.2 when specifies a condition, if you are complying with those conditions, then your credit cannot be denied to you. Now, one first condition is you should have received goods and services. Now, merely because in 2A invoice is not there, you have the invoice, you can very well say I have received the goods and services. You have GRN, your payment, your invoice, delivery challan, everything is there. B, you should have received have the proper duty paying document, which you have the invoice you have. Third is that the person should have filed the return and tax should have been paid. Now, person can file a return. If he declares it in the B2C transaction, it will not be reflected in 2A. Reflection in 2A also did not indicate that the tax has been paid, because tax was paid under 3B, whereas GSTR1 was only a output supply transaction. So, and then it should have been used for you should have taken the credit within by September end. These 4 conditions, they were not, violation of these 4 conditions was never alleged in show cause notices, which many of you may have received, which just indicate that 3B and 2A difference is so much. If such notices goes to the appellate authority or the higher authority like tribunal, I can't say about the Joint Commissioner Appellate Authority, but it goes to a tribunal, you will find first the tribunal will ask you which invoice you want to deny the credit. You can't deny the credit in vacuum. Say 10 lakh rupees credit not available, but which invoice you are referring to? That when the department, nobody in the department is able to find out which invoices the credit is not deniable. In fact, the client himself found it very difficult to reconcile and come to a conclusion which invoices are not uploaded or loaded. And therefore, such notices would have not withstand the legal scrutiny in absence of such amendment which has been brought in. Now they have put a condition in 16.2 itself. What it says is the details of invoice or debit note referred to in clause A has been furnished in the statement of outward supply, and such details have been communicated to such person by such invoice or debit note in the manner specified in section 37. Now it's become mandatory condition that now there are not 4 conditions, there are 5th condition. The 5th condition says that in clause A, such details have been furnished by the supplier, and also such details have been communicated to the recipient. And therefore, now the correlation with your purchase register and this, you have to substantiate that the amount is reflected in my 2A. It is not now left to the department. Earlier, department had to do this exercise of 2A and your purchase register, find out which invoice is matching, which is not matching, and then they have to come to a conclusion. But now that is not mandatory. What is mandatory is now for you to decide to take this. This is now put a very big question. I am taking a little time on this because it's a very important question. You see, when we do this reconciliation between 2A and 3B, or rather 3B is a purchase register which we have from details come from purchase register to this. It is possible for us to take a view that whatever is the invoice reflected in 2A, I will take the credit that much. So first is your account shows 50 lakh rupees credit, but your 2A shows 43 lakhs credit. Whether 7 lakhs credit you should take or not. Suppose this is you are doing in the month of April 2021. Whether you will take 43 or whether you take 50. That's the first question you must answer. Some conservative company or multinational companies who don't want any janjats, this thing, they will take 43 lakh, saying that my 2A is reflected. I am presuming that in 2A, the credit which are specified for the item which are specified in section 17.5 are not there. I mean, if it is there, then to that extent, you will have to exclude that as invoice also. Because if it is a credit for canteen supply, for credit for your health insurance and all that, that credit you may be reflected in 2A, but you will delete those items and arrive at a figure which credit is eligible. So first thing is you have to take that decision. Now, in April onwards, you can go on taking that. Will you also amend your accounting system? If you decide to take 43 lakh credit in our example, then whether your ledger also will be amended to indicate 43. Otherwise, after 2 years, somebody will say, sir, ledger shows 50, your 3B shows 43. Which one you are not taken? Which one you are taken? That is going to be reconciliation after, when the audit comes after 2 years, 3 years. And we know all the corporate bodies function after 2-3 years, either they are transferred or they are not available. And then we will have a Herculean task to clarify. Because in our example, it is less. But it is quite possible in some month, 2A will show more and this will show less. Because the past invoices are reflected. So whether the accounting will be there or not. Secondly, if you take a view that 43 is tax credit to be taken, now you go in April 21 onwards, you come to March 22, you no doubt you can go on taking less. But in September 22, when you come, what will you do? Your gap between the 2A and your accounts is say around 1 crore. Will you say, I will not take 1 crore credit? Because once you allow your time to lapse before September, then your credit is gone. There will be very little chance of you retrieving the credit and taking the credit. So that is going to be a big question. Now, this clause says you can only take 43 lakh credit. And you cannot take 7 lakh credit in our example. But this clause will be effective from, as I said, January 22, not before that. Unlikely, up till now, our experience is that they're only from the next year of January that this becomes effective, unless government takes a very keen interest and tries to push these amendments and maybe made effective from October, November, we don't know. But otherwise, they get effective from that period. So this clause will not apply for a credit which is taken prior to that period. It will be only effective from the prospectively, because this clause has not been given a retrospective effect like the earlier one, first one, July 17 one. This has not been given a retrospective effect. That is first question. Second question is, when we come to September, it will be a very crucial question. Suppose one view we can take is that 1 crore difference. We know we can identify supplier wise, this is the amount of difference which is there. We don't take the credit. In which case, if a supplier comes subsequently after September 22, he has not filed the return for whatever reason, he did not have funds, he was no accountant was not there, and many reasons can be there. He filed the return in November 22. And now it gets reflected in your 2A. You will not be able to claim credit. And if moment you can't claim a credit, I don't think any company will reimburse the tax amount to the supplier also. Then the question comes, if you take credit, then you are violating this law. And rightly, you should have reversed the credit. Otherwise, you take credit. One way is you reverse the credit, or you take credit and then fight out. Follow up your supplier. Follow up with your supplier, because even if supplier uploads the invoice in say November 22, and he writes the invoice number and all that details which are of April 21, your April 21 2A will get uploaded, updated. You follow? In the month of April, when you verified, there was a difference of 7 lakh, 50 lakh and 43 lakh. But some supplier has uploaded the invoice in November 22, say what 2 lakh. So then gap became less. Credit, your account credit remains 50 lakhs, but your 2A credit becomes 45 lakhs. You will not be asked to reverse the credit if you have taken a credit. All that supplier will be asked is to pay 2 lakh plus interest of 2 lakh from April onwards. You follow my mind? And therefore, my advice would be that 1 crore credit, which is the difference in our example, which we are saying, if you are looking at it, go supplier wise, you should take in confidence the purchase manager that which supplier will ultimately pay after following up for 6 months, 8 months, whatever period you feel, 8 months, 9 months, whatever period you feel is reasonable for you to follow up. And you may keep a cap, say March 22, March 23, I will follow up and thereafter I will write off. So March 23, whatever supplier is filing, I will reimburse them the GST amount. I will reimburse them the tax amount. But whosoever files after March 23, I will not do that. And then purchase manager you can follow up for 6 months, or your purchase manager or whosoever your concerned person can follow up for 6 months, get that thing. Your credit therefore will become valid. But if you do not do that, then your credit is gone. At the same time, credit gone, you must match up that credit amount with your financial ledger. That is going to be a big challenge, because today we have a system. Moment we account an invoice, we debit the main base amount, base value with the expense, and credit your create an asset to the extent of GST amount in our GST receivable account. We do not know which invoice the GST will reflect it, which invoice it will not be reflected. And you have a lot of problem on state-wise and all that problem. But this clause, to comply with this, you must company must internally decide as to what they will be doing this. Because you still have time. It will not be effective from the first day itself, from the Finance Act itself. You still have 7, 8, 9 months time. And therefore, you must reflect that properly in this. That's the second amendment, which has been proposed in the section. And as I said, this will be effective from the day notification will come into effect, whenever dates are notified. It will not apply to a grade which are reflected in the earlier period, unless the courts interpreted these are retrospective in nature, clarifying mainly this thing. This second amendment. Now we have audit. Third is the mighty blow to all of us. You all know that 9(9)(c) is required to be certified today. 9(c) is required to be certified today by the auditors, and 9 is required to be uploaded by the client himself. Of course, all of us, we have been helping the client in uploading preparation of 9 and uploading of the same. And wherever the difference is noticed, we have requested the client to pay the amount, and they have paid also. A lot of clients were paid. The portal shows the figure around 3,000 crore, which has been paid by the GSTR 9 when uploading GSTR 9. But now what is proposed is that GSTR 9(c) will not be certified. It will be a self-certification. You see, I must tell you one difference between the central tax, indirect tax, and the state indirect tax. The central indirect tax, you have excise duty, you have service tax. But you don't have service tax, but you have excise duty, you have service tax, and you have custom duty. There are 3 major central indirect taxes. And state sales tax was there, VAT was there. Major. I mean, I'm not looking to entry tax and all that. None of the central tax, either service tax or excise duty or custom act, has a provision for annual return. Excise duty is in effective from 44 onwards. Service tax from 94 onwards. Custom acts 1962. Maybe earlier also it may be there. But none of them have a central assessment system like income tax has. And therefore, right from the day one, if you would have talked to central officer, you will find they were not very comfortable with what is this centralized annual return. Because to certain extent, whatever audit they are planning, it pinches upon their area. The business audit, if you look at the excise and service tax, always the GST audit department were visiting the office of the officer, premises of the registered person, asking for information and auditing it. They were never, hardly anybody was called to the office. I mean, the way income tax assessments are being made for every return, hardly any returns were being scrutinized and details were asked. If you look at the notices which are flowing, because in income tax, what happens, there is hardly any show cause notice which is given. Straight you receive the assessment order. But in excise and service tax, the assessments are reopened. In a sense, there is a self-assessment. And self-assessment are reopened by way of issuing the show cause notice. If you study the show cause notices, most of the show cause notices flow from audit section because of the objection taken in audit, or from investigation agencies like DGGI or DRI or this thing. Hardly any assessment proceedings are taken to do this. And therefore, I mean, what would have been the importance of 9C certification? We do not know, because still we have not seen the audits in this and how much importance they would have placed. But any event, now with this effect, this finance bill proposes that there will be no self audit certification by independent chartered accountant or cost accountant, and while filing 9C. The 9C will be self-certified. In fact, self-certificate loses its much meaning. You can 9 itself, you can amend, and below that you can say verification, that I hereby verify and all this thing. But let me tell you practically, some people may be feeling that, look, this may impact our revenue. But I must tell you, most of the client, when they reconcile with the accounts, they always find some differences. And therefore, they always take the help of a chartered accountant or whosoever consultant is there. Always, this is a win-win practice. So the reason being, in the finance department, or rather the accounts department, you have so many sections. One is a tax team who looks after the compliance with the direct and indirect taxes. Then there's accounting team who does only accounting. Then there is a creditors team who makes a payment. There are so many treasury team. There are so many teams are there. And if you find, I mean, the person in the tax team department always takes the figure from the account department and pays the tax. He informs that these are the code number, you give me the details, and he will pay the tax on that basis. Now, this information on a monthly basis, you make the payment. But when you make an accounts and find that during the month so many adjustments have been made, so many plus and reversal entries have been made, all these doesn't get communicated to the tax department, and with the result, there's always a difference between the two sales return, purchase return. There are so many other reasons for this, and that's why reconciliation is being made. And department also, while they audit in service tax, they would always come and ask for, please reconcile your ST3 return value with the return in the amount in the balance sheet and profit and loss account. So this is the main reason for difference. But I'm sure that the advice from the independent person will always be continued. And at the time of filing annual return, possibly the CFO level also, they may ask that you please get it certified from some, verified from some independent person, so that they are sure that all compliances have been made. So we don't have to worry. But as far as the provisions are concerned, it will be applicable for 2021, no doubt on that, because as I said, this section will be effective only from somewhere in November or December or 21 or 22 January. Whether it will be effective, it will be applicable for April to whatever period we have, say January, November 21 or December 21. We'll have to wait and watch whether the government brings in amendment in the while they're passing the bill. Otherwise, that will be effective for that broken period also, and certification will have to be done on that basis. Let us see when the government brings in passes the act. At that time, whether they say bring in the particular section here, that this will not be required for 2020, 21, 22. 2021 will definitely required on this. The manner of computing the interest, we all know the government has taken a lot of interest in interest now. Earlier, they were only taking interest on the payment of taxes, but now in interest also you find method, so many methods we have seen notices by computing the manner of interest. Most interesting method I have seen, I mean, we could always think that, look, there are only two ways. One is you take on a gross interest or you pay on a net. There's only two ways we thought of computing the interest. But some notices from Uttarakhand really made us amazing method of calculation. What they've done is, you see, it is like we call it, you call Marwari interest or you call any interest, what they have done is, suppose you have paid 40 lakh rupees in say January 18 for towards a tax amount, and this pertains to July 17 tax payment. So you're liable to pay interest from July 17 to January 18 for 8, 6, 7 months. A dispute is whether gross or net. And the tax amount on a gross, which is done on gross, say comes to 15 lakh rupees, 16 lakh rupees. So what they've done is 40 lakhs, they have first appropriated to interest. So they have said 40 minus 16. You have paid only 24 lakhs towards the principal. And therefore your interest for the 16 lakhs still continues. I hope you understood every audience has understood the manner of computing. It is, I don't know from who got this thing. So out of 40 lakhs which you deposited, the interest comes to 16 lakhs. So you first appropriate towards interest, and 24 is the principal you deposited. 16 lakh is still principal remains, which you are till today not paid, and therefore you pay this amount interest also on this. Now this method was there. If you look at the first, I think the second draft of the GST Act, the method which is now there in the notices issued from Uttarakhand State Tax Officer, identical method was provided in the section itself, and people are left, right, and center objected to it, saying that government has become worse than the money lenders and blood suckers and all that words used, and therefore that was deleted. But notwithstanding that, you see, in the today's manner of payment of tax, when I deposit the tax, any amount, I have to indicate the code number, whether it's for IGST, whether it's for CGST, whether it's for SGST, or whether it's for an interest, whether it's for a penalty and all this thing. I have to indicate that a separate code numbers are given. And moment I indicate that its deposit is for the IGST, deposit for the interest, I cannot appropriate this. So having appropriated towards a debit amount for duty, the government cannot force me that no, this is not duty, this is interest. So this method of calculation, of course, we have been protesting. Therefore, the client itself was surprised. He calculated on gross amount, it comes to 2 crore. And this fellow has given me interest of 8 crore rupees, saying that still itna baki hai sab. So we were all worried. Itna amount kahan se aa gaya on this. So, but now the government has made it clear that look, it is on a net amount, provided the provision has been added. That is where we have to be very careful, that your returns are filed before issuing the notice under section proceeding under section 73 or 74. If your returns are filed subsequent to that, then they say it will be on a gross amount. So the specific provision has been made. So if you feel, and it's a big question, that's there is a difference between service tax and excise duty and this GST. In service tax, you could have paid the amount, you could have filed the return without making payment of service tax. The portal was accepting the return. In GST, returns are not accepted without making payment. The portal rejects the return. Therefore, when the proceeding under section 73 starts, that means he asks you for information. Please give your information. Please let us know how much amounts GST you have paid, not paid. I mean, now he comes to know that you filed return from July 21 on, you have not filed return from December 20 onwards. You are still required to file return for October, November, December 20. Because on a click of button, he comes to know all this fact. So before he proceeds on the information, giving you a show cause notice, if you file the return, for that purpose, you'll have to collect all the money also. Because if you feel your October, November, December returns tax payment is 50 lakh rupees and you don't have money, then you as well cannot file a return at all. And since you can't file a return, you will be liable to pay the tax on a gross amount. Again, as I said, this is a provision which the government intends to file it. Whether it's in the nature of penalty or it's in the nature of interest is a big question. We'll have to contest when the interest cannot be charged on the gross amount. The question is whether you make an exception or not. It's a litigation question. We'll have to see. But the way, as far as possible, if the client can arrange for the tax amount, because in many cases we have seen that the tax payment is hardly 5 to 7, 10%, and balance is 90% is credit. So if client can arrange for 5 to 10%, even if with the higher lending interest rate, then 90% credit, no interest will be payable if you file the return prior to 73, 74 coming into picture. Notices coming into picture. We'll have to see. We must request. Now, these are the amendments which are made in section 129 and 130. See, I must explain 129 and 130. 129 is basically made for confiscation of goods, for detention of goods. Then there's a confiscation. On the road, when vehicle is moving, there's a provision that you should carry certain documents, invoice, proper duty paying document, you should carry, and e-way bill. E-way bill is proposed, e-way bill is made. Now, if there's a difference between the e-way bill and the invoice, that means the person on the road feels that the documents are not properly made, he can detain the vehicle. Now, this can happen anytime, anywhere in the on the road. So if the goods are traveling from Bombay, from say Thana to your Jaipur, it can be caught in Gujarat, it can be caught in Rajasthan, it can be caught anywhere. Anywhere it can be caught. Now, once the detention takes place, the person stationed in Bombay, if it is caught in Pali area or Rajasthan, he gets jittery because there is nobody there. How to get the goods released? So government has provided certain measure that you pay the tax amount, penalty amount, and you do away with this. I will not bother you. Moment you pay this tax amount and penalty amount, I will at least release the goods. At least goods are released, vehicles are released. Now, government, in very often what happens is, the vehicle owner does not know that there is some difference between the goods and there is a difference between the payment of tax and the description of goods. The driver is not supposed to verify the goods and find out whether the description given in the invoice is of same goods which is loaded in his vehicle. Driver is not supposed to make an inquiry and find out this question. Now, he does not know. In such a case, to detain vehicle and confiscate the vehicle is totally incorrect. Because the man has acted bona fidely. You have handed over the goods to me. I am transporting only the goods. I have not played any role in your evasion of taxes, in your sort of non-payment of tax. Then to detain the vehicle and confiscate the vehicle was not proper. And therefore, by these amendments, what the government in section 120 and 130 also what the government is intended to do is separate the proceeding of 120 and 130. I can confiscate the goods, I can do anything with the goods, and 130 I will allow the vehicle to go away. I will not have anything to do with it. Unless you come forward and do it, I may offload the goods and do it and allow the vehicle to go away if the detention is, if I feel that vehicle owners have not played any role in it. And if I feel that vehicle owners have played role in it, I may detain and I may issue separate show cause notice under proceeding. I will take it for confiscation of vehicle and release of vehicle and all that. Section 74, 120 and 130 are all with that objective. 129 only says, I mean, amendment in section 129 says that they have deleted section 120 and 130 from the explanation 2. It means even if the owner has, even if the person, main person, like is you detain the goods, you detain vehicle, and goods owner comes and tells me, sir, I am willing to pay this amount. Then your section 74 provided that the proceeding under 130 is also abated, is over. No proceeding to be taken on 130. As regards goods, he is paid. But if your department comes to a conclusion that look, 130, the conveyance, the transporter also has played a role, then there was no penalty on the transporter. And to provide that penalty, they have said if 129 the goods and goods are tax has been paid, penalty has been paid, then on 130 the separate proceeding can go on. That means notices will come to show cause, notice will come to this and that. There was one major reason for this is that they have made the demand tax also. What happens is the amount is paid at certain jurisdiction. You are registered in Mumbai, as in our example. The Rajasthan fellow has got it. Now, how do you make payment in Rajasthan? You are not registered in Rajasthan. The question of making, then they were giving a temporary registration. Then they were saying you make a payment like this, that there were so many issues which are coming up. And now with these amendments, I think this problem should get resolved. This is the, so this is the first amendment. They said, even if 129 person has settled the his issues, 130 proceeding can continue. Then this is an interesting amendment which has been made. You see, recovery proceeding can take on, you can take under section 79 so many recovery proceeding for detention of the attachment of the bank account and other refunds and all that thing. What the self-assessed tax was defined, and self-assessed tax means whatever I have declared in the GSTR 3B or GSTR 1. Rather 3B, it is more than one. But if the department turns around and finds out that in GSTR 1 you have made 1 crore, but as per department it should be 1.25 crore. For 25 lakhs, department can demand a tax under section 73, 74, no doubt. But for 25 lakh, department was not allowed to take a recovery proceeding because the self-assessed tax was defined in such a manner. That was a lacuna which they try to fill up now. And they said self-assessment tax would include a tax payable in respect of details of outward supply furnished under return so and so, and also include the return which are not including the return furnished under section 39. So whatever supplies you are not included in the return furnished under 39, that also we can take out the recovery proceeding. That's a department stand. Now they made it. Provisional attachment. This is more interesting. You see, we have been hearing about the fake invoices and all that transactions day in and day out. We read on the paper about the fake transactions. Normally, what happens is in a fake transaction, there are certain dummy persons who really do not know anything about the entire transaction, and they are made to issue invoices. The dummy person is issues the invoice and passes on the credit. Somebody else takes the credit. Now, credit taken by him may be denied, no doubt on that, because of the fact that this invoice is fake and all that. But the question is whether you can levy a penalty on him, or if you find out at that particular time, can you attach his bank account? So there's A is a person who's a dummy, B is a person who's actual person. A has issued an invoice to B. The B has taken advantage of the credit. By credit utilization, he has sold the goods, or he has taken a refund of that. That's a different matter. And the credit is lying in his account. The money is lying in his account, bank account. The A is, of course, a dummy person, means maybe some peon type person or no, well, unknown person, and who normally is not traceable also. So what the department has done is, in A and B, they amended section 122(1)(a) because they could prosecute only A only earlier. So last year they brought 122(1)(a) to say that we can prosecute the levy penalty on the person who's actually benefited, or on the person who's a mastermind. So these two clauses they've introduced in 122(1)(a). Otherwise, there's no penalty on B. And therefore, now in this, what they have said is provisional seizure of the attachment of the bank account, that it is not only of A, the seizure of bank account can be made, but B and C also, B or any other person who is the mastermind of that. Because what they have found out from their experience is that A does not have anything in the bank account, whereas B's bank account is flushed with the funds. So unless they attach B's bank account, they will not be able to realize the money which they are, which they feel that they should realize from A. But ultimately, immediately government should get the money. And if the government issues a show cause notice and proceedings are to be carried out in 1 or 2 years' time, the entire money will also get wiped out from B's account. And therefore, they may go on proceeding further, but the realization of the funds may not be there. And therefore, in order to ensure that they are able to attach and take away the money, that they have amended section 83, and they said the person who are benefited by these fake invoices and the person who are mastermind behind the invoices will also be, whose bank account can also be attached. Otherwise, the word used in section 83 was a taxable person, and taxable person was only mean the A in our example, and they could not have done anything to the B and C. And therefore, they amended this law. This is a good provision amendment. The pre-deposit of 10% mandatory before this. In the case of 129 amendment, where the penalty is levied, and if you want to go in appeal for levy of penalty, then naturally you are not required to pay 10%, but you are required to pay 25% of the pre-deposit amount. See, unless you pay 200% of the tax amount is penalty. Now in the amended section 129, the goods are not released. And as I gave the example that the goods, in order to release the goods, you have to pay the tax, the penalty of 200%. And without that, they are not able to release the goods at all. So most of the cases, you would have already deposited the amount of 25% before releasing of the goods. The bank guarantee and all, you can of course do it, but all this takes time, and the goods are stationed at seized at a very far away from your destination. So it becomes problem for you to coordinate with them. This is the changes which are reflected in a 129. Earlier, you have to pay the tax and penalty amount equal to 100%. See, that's why I said the exam problem was there. You are in Bombay, goods are seized in Pali, Jaipur, you pay tax amount there. How does a person sitting in Bombay come to know, assessing officer, that you paid the tax amount there? Because you are paying in a different registration. There you are not registered. He gives you a temporary registration for making a payment. And in spite of making a payment, this Bombay fellow was also demanding the tax. He's saying, I do not know whether you made the payment or not there. So therefore, you show them challan and all that. That hardly matters. And therefore, government said tax amount will be deposited here. I mean, they will make a system by which the information will come to the origination amount, but penalty amount you deposit in the respective location. Possibly some system will come by which the deposit will also be they will allow you to deposit the amount without registration, and that proceeding can go on the basis. And if such a penalty amount you want to appeal against, that no, I was correct, there was some small error, and of course when we have appealed against, we personally have appealed against in many clients case, we have succeeded also, and the penalties have been set aside. So in such a case, they have made 25% of the deposit amount very mandatory on this. Otherwise, there's no, in this first clause is applicable when the owner comes forward, and the second clause is applicable when owner doesn't come forward. Otherwise, this is okay. These are minor changes which have been proposed in the section 120 and 130. And this is 7 days, the time limit has been reduced and all those things. It's not much actually. Section 130 of GST Act provides for confiscation of conveyance, which I already explained, that goods and conveyance are sought to be dealing. If the department finds that there is some role has been played by the transporter, then they will go for a separate proceeding of seizure and confiscation of vehicle. Otherwise, they will continue with the same proceeding. Collection of statistic. This is the statistic we have to collect. Now, earlier the commissioner was required to issue the notification, but now he can issue any direction itself. These are minor amendments which are made. This is a major amendment, section 16, which is there, and you need to be very careful on this. See, section 96B, if you remember, the definition of export of goods and export of services is different. In case of export of goods, there is no condition that the person should have realized the foreign currency in towards the sale of goods. But in case of services, there is a mandatory condition that you have to realize the foreign currency. The export of goods was defined in a manner that once the goods leaves the Indian territorial water, it will be considered as export of goods. And you are entitled for all the benefits which are there, except in case of DGFT. All along they have put the condition that whatever advance license I'm giving, whatever other benefits I'm giving is subject to realization of the foreign currency. But in excise, there was no such condition for goods. In 96B, they brought the condition that I will not grant you IGST refund unless you have realized the foreign currency. So they brought this condition recently, and they have unruled 96B. This rule itself was a challengeable rule because rule 16, section 16 did not provide for any such condition. But now we are trying to put the condition by substantive condition, which is not there in export of goods. And therefore, there was a question which is there. But there was no such condition for the purpose of the taking refund of unutilized credit. You know that either you can take IGST refund or you can take the refund of the IGST unutilized credit. There's no such condition in the IGST refund, unutilized credit refund. Now they have brought this, that if you want the unutilized credit to be given, a refund is required, then you also must prove that the conditions are, you have realized the foreign currency. Now, this is going to be a challenging task. In most of the cases, you realize the funds. But very often, we have seen in some situation like this, recently you must have seen in Myanmar, the president has been, the military power has been introduced. Military has taken over the proceedings. Now, countries like America and all put sanction against them. Same way in Iran also, countries have put, America has put a sanction. Now, once you put a sanction, sometimes the sanction is so strong that you can't realize the money. The money is not allowed to be transmitted there, from there to our country. And in such a case, whatever exports you have taken place, it creates a problem. Kindly note, it is only to give you the benefit of unutilized credit and IGST, that these conditions are there. It does not mean that your goods are not exported. The definition of export of goods has not been amended. It will continue to be export of goods, and therefore no GST is payable by you. You must remember this. Merely because when I can't take a particular benefit which is attached to export of goods, my benefits are restricted, it does not mean that the transaction ceases to be export of goods. Some person feels that the goods are even now will not be considered export of goods, and it will be tax will be demanded. No, tax cannot be demanded. All that can be done is to the corresponding to that goods, I will not be allowed to get the refund of unutilized credit. So if my exports are to different countries, if something to this Myanmar, and I did not realize the money, then on those two, three transactions which are not there, refund or my refund of unutilized credit will be denied. So only to this extent there is a problem, but you should be careful, because and credit also will not be denied. Credit will remain in your books of account. Not that credit will be defaced. Credit will remain in books of account. If you can use for local, if you can use for any other purpose, you are most free to use that credit. It is not that credit is going to be denied to you in this. This is the amendment which they brought. Now they have naturally, once you try to deny the refund on 96B for IGST payment, you should not allow the refund for unutilized credit. And this is unparalleled this thing. These are the same provisions, but they have done this in this year also. See, these are finance minister has mentioned some of the amendments which have been made since last 2-3 months, which is they have made it, and those amendments she has referred to it has tightened the belts of various persons, various registered person. She has referred to these 5-6 amendments, and I will, given the time, I'll refer to 1 or 2 main, 3 main this thing, and then most of us must have discussed this system. Nil return. Now you can file the return through SMS, provided it's a nil return. There is absolutely no entry in the return. This is a big issue, you know. I mean, government should put a cap in the late fees. See, many companies have obtained registration in various states, in many states, for few transactions, like your event management company, like your catering company. You hold 1 or 2 events in Goa, you've taken a registration in Goa. You hold 1 or 2 events in Jaipur, you've taken a registration in Rajasthan. Now thereafter, there are no events. I mean, after Corona Kal, you must have found that there is absolutely no event is there. That time you have taken office, some offices and all this thing. Now these returns are not being filed when they are nil transaction. Although there is a nil transaction, there is no late fee. Late fee is still payable. Some companies, some SSCs have problem that late fee runs into a huge amount. Now, unless a government feels a cap, like, you know, in the late return in service tax, there was a cap of late fee payment. They should put a cap on the late fee payment, and therefore the people will file a nil return by payment of that cap. Now they have permitted the return through SMS. So one can file a return through SMS. Only three returns are permitted: 3B, GSTR 1, and CMP 08. Not GSP 08. It is CMP 08. So the person was following the composition method. It is a facility which they have given. This is the main thing which is now they have introduced. This is section 39, and this is going to affect many of our clients. So therefore, I'll go a little detail of this. Section 39 was amended in the Finance Bill 2020, and that amendment was made effective from 10th November 2020. As I said, always there's a take time to make it effective. There's a separate notification which they've issued to make it effective. What this section 39 says, that the government has the power to specify the class of person who will be filing a return on the specified dates. So you specify a class of person and you specify when the return due dates will be there. This will not be applicable to those who are specified in section 14 of the IGST Act. And the section IGST Act is for online information and retrieval services. We will not go in detail of that. They will not be eligible for this. Prior to 1st January 2021, there were two classes of person. One is below 1.5 crore and above 1.5 crore. All above 1.5 crore were required to file monthly return. There's no choice on them. Below 1.5 crore, you have choice to pay quarterly filing or you file monthly. So what they have done is 84/2020, they have said, I will give you a choice to those who are filing monthly or quarterly. Those who are filing monthly, they have a choice to file quarterly. Those who have filed choice quarterly, they can file monthly, they can shift. But beyond 1.5 crore to 5 crore, that means your turnover is above 1.5 crore and up to 5 crore, you have to file the return quarterly. So up to 5 crore return, you file the return quarterly. Again, you have a choice to go on monthly. There's no doubt on that. If you want for any reason to go on a monthly basis, you can go on a monthly basis. But up to that choice, which was there for 1.5 crore, now they have given the choice up to 5 crore. So you can go up to return on quarterly basis. Manner of exercising the option, you go onto the portal and options are exercised. Deemed option, the deemed option is if you are filing the return quarterly for 1.5 crore, then you will continue to file the return for 1.5 crore. That is there in this thing. The manner of payment, you have two choices, 1.5 normal payment and special procedure. The manner of payment is that once you either a monthly basis determine the tax amount payable. You maintain your accounts properly and you determine what is the tax amount payable and you make the payment as you were normally making. But if you can't determine that because of your accounting system and all that, and then they may lay down a special procedure. What they lay down a special procedure is that irrespective of whatever you are required to pay, you pay 35% of the tax amount in deposit in cash. Of course, that is subject to your calculation of already if 35% comes to 1 lakh rupees. So you pay 35%. Last quarter, you find out how much you paid in cash when you are filing the return. So last quarter will be October to December 20. Whatever you file in, say you paid 1 lakh rupees as a cash amount in while you filing quarterly return. You pay without computing anything, you pay 35,000 rupees in your cash account, and that will be sufficient compliance. When you file the return in March, even if the tax amount comes to say 50,000 rupees, the government will not ask for interest. So that's a facility given to you that you deposit 35,000 and the matter ends there. By balance 15,000, you deposit the month end March. So you have a normal payment, either on monthly basis, determine the amount and then pay, or your due dates again, or you make a special procedure for payment. Then these due dates, for that normally the dates are 20, but this is 22. They are given on quarterly 22 dates and this thing. Ineligibility and invoice furnishing facility. Now there's a special facility given, IFF, which is called up to 50 lakh. You will be able to the special facility will be there in the portal by which you will be able to upload the invoice, because you will not be filing the return and all that. So you can upload the invoice up to 50 lakh, those who are turnover below 50 lakhs. Now this is a new thing which has come up, and in government has now tried to stagger this thing. What the government has found out by statistics is that out of 1 crore 10 lakh registration which they have, around 90 to 93 lakh people are only up to 5 crore return, so turnover up to 5 crore. Balance 18 to 19 lakhs only are required or be above 5 crore. And therefore they felt that if they give benefit of the quarterly returns to the persons, then majority of the person will have a lesser tension of filing a return. And then, of course, the problem is, of course, as I said, in the GSTR 2A and 2B is the main issue, which we'll have to tackle along. Now your limits are limited. You cannot go beyond 5 years. So every time person, see, now section 86, 36(4) is amended. What they say is you can take the credit in excess of, you cannot take the credit in excess of 5%, then what is reflected in 2A. So if your 2A reflects 1 crore, then you can take up to 1 crore 5 lakh. And these persons, therefore, they have given those who are IFF facility. Now, if you are filing a return quarterly, you will also be filing a GSTR 1 quarterly. And therefore, your invoice will not get reflected on a monthly basis unless your turnover is 50 lakhs. I mean, you can file the quarterly, monthly return, but most of the people, those who will file a return quarterly, they will also file the invoice quarterly, and therefore it will not get reflected in monthly returns. And the supplier or recipient will always feel they will buy from a person who will file the return on a monthly basis. That's a choice which the one has to make in this. Electronic invoice system, now this is already into the operation. You all are aware, those whose turnover was 500 crore is turnover. They have been made effective from 1st October 2020, e-invoicing. Those whose turnover is 100 crore, they have been made effective from 1st January. And those whose turnover, of course, now they will slowly go on bringing the turnover below. Friends, it's a lot of time. I will only come to a cancellation of invoice, which is a major area of concern. Once you upload the invoice in the portal, and subsequently for any reason you find that invoice is required to be cancelled, the portal keeps the storage up to 24 hours. And if you cancel the invoice in 24 hours, you can cancel in portal itself. There's no difficulty. But when it comes to beyond 24 hours, what you should do? You can't cancel in portal. Your invoice got registered in the government. You will definitely issue the credit note for your accounting purpose, because you already debited the debtors account. Your invoices get reflected in the sales invoice. You'll have to issue the credit note. There are two choices. One is whether such invoice you should reflect in GSTR 1 or not. Or you reflect invoice and you reflect credit note. Or you should not reflect such invoice in the GSTR 1. These are two questions which is the main, because we all know, for whatever reason, many of the sales takes place after 20th of the month. And that cancellation also takes place there. I'll first permutate what is the advantage, disadvantage. If you reflect the invoice in GSTR 1, the credit gets auto-populated into the account of the recipient automatically. The moment you are reflected in 1, it gets auto-populated. Rightly, recipient should reject the credit. He should not take the credit that much. And he should say, I am not accepting the credit. Such facility is today not available. And you can adjust that credit amount in your tax only when he has reversed the credit. Having gone there in 2A, it will come in 2B also. If to substantiate that is reverse the credit is practically impossible task. Today you have no communication left out by which you can find out that recipient has not taken a credit except a certificate from him or certificate from any chartered accountant of his. Now, if that certificate from him or his chartered accountant becomes is not proper, is not true, which may be proved after 2 years, 3 years, then the adjustment of the tax amount which you have made in credit note will be denied to you. So if you are required to pay 50,000 rupees tax amount, you have made 50,000 rupees credit note. Tomorrow 50,000 rupees credit is taken by your recipient. And I mean, rightly you should not take the credit, but we all know how practically it happens. The partnership firm and proprietary firm really is not able to, whatever is going to be reflected in 2A, they'll take the credit immediately. In fact, section 43A, which has not been introduced now, may against the invoice, it will be deemed as acceptance. That's a deeming provision, but that has not been made effective in this budget also. But therefore, if the person takes a credit and you are not able to substantiate the credit, then we will have a problem on the in your adjustment. If you do not reflect the GSTR1 and GSTR credit note in the GSTR1, all that will happen is whenever the amount reflected in invoices reflected in e-invoicing portal and amount reflected in the GSTR1, whenever matching is made, the department will turn around and say, look, there's a difference between the matching, what you are shown in GSTR1 and what you are showing in your e-invoicing portal. That can be explained to you. That you can very well explain that this is the reason why I have given a credit note. I have not paid this, and I have not included this because of the fact that I don't want recipient to take the credit. Because if by introducing an invoice, I will be helping a recipient to take the credit. Therefore, my suggestion is that once you are cancelling the invoice beyond 24 hours and issuing a credit note, which you'll have to do it for accounting purpose, the credit note, you should not declare credit note and e-invoicing both in your GSTR1. And if at all, if it is a GSTR1 is made applicable, I mean, the government gives you a GSTR1, which is pre-filled, then you should delete such invoices. Second only point I want to take is what the government has done is government has enabled portal to issue you the invoicing. In a sense, if your turnover is above 1 crore, above 100 crore, you go to the portal, whether you can make invoicing or not, the government has enabled you. Section 48, rule 48.4 makes it mandatory that if you are liable to issue invoice, but you are not able to issue invoicing, you are not issuing invoicing, the invoice will not be considered as valid invoice. With the result, if the invoice is not valid invoice, the credit may be denied to the other side. Because then that's a big question. The credit itself may be denied to the other side. And therefore, as far as possible, you are on the conservative side, that on the basis of even if invoicing is not there, you prepare invoicing, nothing happens. Then you should write, in the FAQ, there's a email given. You should write to the person that, look, I am liable for preparing invoice. I have not been made enabled to prepare invoice, or I am not liable to prepare invoice, but I have been enabled to do this thing, and settle this thing from the email from the help desk. Otherwise, if tomorrow department takes a view that, look, you are liable to prepare invoice which you have not done it, and there is no correspondence available between you and the help desk, then they may say this invoice prepared by you itself is wrong, not valid, and hence the credit may be denied to you on this. I'll take 5 more minutes to wind up. These are all written, which you already held it. This is one. Well, utilization of credit. Now government is when they have seen that so many fake invoices and all that, is coming heavily on the utilization of credit. We already seen under 36(4) they have permitted only 5% excess credit, more than what is 2A is there. Now in 86A, they have given powers to the commissioner for these reasons. If the credit is there, he can restrict your utilization of credit. Notwithstanding this, you must have observed that government overnight has blocked the 40,000 crore rupees credit of various suppliers, various registered persons. And there's a hue and cry, still they are finding it out, and many cases they have, of course, unblocked those credit. But blocking of credit without finding out this also was a common thing. But now they can block the credit. Legally, they should issue in writing to you why they are blocking a credit. But practically, we have seen they just block the credit without giving you any reason, without giving you any basis for this. Third, now they brought is they will permit you utilization of only 99% of the credit. Balance 1% you must pay from a pocket. That is another provision they brought. And wherever the 100% is paid through the credit, they have started inquiry. I mean, they feel it's a fake invoices instances. So if you have an instance where 100% is paid through a credit amount, you can very well see that the credit has been, you receive the inquiry and you start the audit and all this procedure. However, there is some exceptions which have been made, that if the payment of tax has been made by a specified person like Karta, MD, Executive Director of the C, or 1 lakh rupees in 2 financial year, then this 99% restriction does not apply. Receipt of refund of more than 1 lakh rupees unutilized credit you have received from zero rated supply, or inverted duty structure, or payment of tax through 1% has been made on output supply, then these restrictions don't apply. My suggestion is, unless you are flushed with the credit for genuine reasons, please pay 1% from the in cash to avoid inquiry. Otherwise, you will have 36 state, 36 inquiries goes on. You will be running here and there for inquiring, and government will find out one reason or other to defer the credit, to deny you the credit of this thing. I think, friend, these are some of the, of course, Rajiv sir has mentioned about the custom also. Custom, they have brought the first provision is only one provision which they brought, which is our this thing, that if the customer, the refund is granted by the custom authorities. You are aware that matching principle and all that they're doing. Now they have brought it that if the custom finds that your refund arises from a bogus credit, which means the department writes to the custom department that look, this and so company has put a bogus claim, refund is there, but it is arising from a bogus credit or whatever fake invoices credit, then they can confiscate the goods and levy penalty equal to 5 times the value of goods.
Okay.
That's the which they have brought it. Let us see how the practically it happens, because we do not have machinery which moves such a fast. Goods will definitely go away because goods get exported immediately in a 2 or 3 days time. Whether in 2 3 days time the department is able to communicate and do this thing, let us see. We'll have to wait and watch. But that's a new provision. Only one provision they brought into the effect with regard to IGST, which can be of interest to you. But otherwise, there is no other provision. Thank you very much, friends, for patiently listening me. I hope I am able to clarify so many issues which will arise. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now you can.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, there are some questions from participants.
No problem.
Yeah. Keval.
Yeah. Sir, I'll take the questions. The first question is with respect to Calcutta Club. Right, like you rightly said, once this is made effective, probably from January 22, it's going back to a retrospective effect from July 17. So supposedly there are some people who have relied on this Calcutta Club and not registered. So how do they practically go about? As far as interest, you said that probably interest should not.
No, now you should
be
register it. Now you should register in January 22. Whenever the law is
prospective effect, or go back and recalculate
the prospective effect. Once this is once a enactment is made by the president and by all the state government, then this will be made effective. So you register on that day and pay the tax, or retrospective tax you pay on that day. And then we know interest for you can very well contest. The liability arose only in this day, therefore no interest is there paid. Penalty, of course, doesn't arise because the liability arises on account of my retrospective amendment. So no question of penalty arises.
Correct. Sir, you discussed about 2A. Now we are also having this 2B as one more form which is being there from the department.
Yeah, pre-filled it is. Pre-filled is there. You see what 2A and 2B difference will be there. In 2A, you will be getting all the credits, which means including the invoices on which you are not entitled for. That 17.5 AC and all that is there. You will get. But 2B, they may screen it out. They will put a code number that these item HSN code number are not entitled for a credit. And when they make 2A, 2B for you, they will remove those credits and put 2B on you.
Correct.
You follow, suppose your 2A reflects 40 lakhs credit, and out of which they, in their program, suppose there is one item which is a canteen supply. Okay, you are not entitled for a credit, food items. And that code number they find in your 40 lakhs credit. So they will remove that credit and they will give you 2B with that other amendment. 2B is not a sacrosanct document. You can very well say canteen supply, I'm eligible for credit because state government has asked me to do it, and all that you can reflect. But that's the way they will do it. And 2B and 2A. 2A, what the law refers to 2A.
So just one more point on this point. If suppose the invoice is uploaded on 12th, actually it goes in the next month when we look at this 2B. But when we look at it 2A, then it comes back to the respective month in which for which the return was filed. So that is one more area of difference, and that is where this 2A and 2B have differences in their.
Yes, I agree. 2B is only for your verification. You see, 2A is a major reflection.
Sir, you talked about gross interest versus net interest. Now we may also have a situation where demand is based on an order of assessment, and not out of a notice under 73 or 74, or directly order of assessment. Then interest, how it will be calculated on gross or net?
What do you mean by order of assessment?
So order of assessment, let's say if there is a URD assessment, unregistered person assessment, or maybe an assessment for non-filers, an ad hoc assessment done without issuing a notice under 73. Now those persons may have credit available with them, but
no,
that
law is only restricting when 73, 74 notices are issued.
okay.
Law is
So
not
there
making,
again
there we can take advantage of that. See, 73, 74 notices cannot be issued without making inquiry from you. Non-filers, if they just get the assessment order by whatever reason they get it, I mean, they may have been issued notices but through the email and all that. But Anish bhai mentioned about the portal being, Atul bhai mentioned about the portal being checked every day. No such small person checks the email every day.
Sir, what Vikram bhai also, yeah.
Yeah, Keval,
Yeah, Raju.
can I add one issue offshoot to that 2S to
Sure,
Gupta ji?
Sure, Raju.
Gupta sir, suppose you have supplied some goods or service to me and you have paid tax delayed, means belatedly. Now, since you have not filed GSTR 1(3)B as the case may be within the time, it is not appearing in my 2A. That's fine. Now, the condition laid down now proposed to be in 16.2, I will take credit only after it has been reflected in 2A, I appreciate. But suppose I take credit now and eventually after 1 or 2 months, it is appearing in 2A after you file your returns and pay the tax. In any case, can we challenge that way ki because of your default, your government is already recovering interest from you? See, this, because this amount is not government's money, your liability is my credit. So it is a tax neutral, government doesn't generate any revenue when entire credit is available. So can they deprive me of credit? Can we challenge constitutionally on this part, sir?
No. I agree with you. We cannot deprive. You see, I will support this. In service tax also, there was a provision that you have to make payment of tax and payment of value of services to the supplier.
Correct.
Within 90 days.
Correct.
And this question on the retention money came.
Correct.
Contractors 5% and 10% are retained.
Correct.
So industry-wide practice.
Correct.
So department went around and said 10% credit I will deny you because of the fact that this amount is retained, you are not paid to a supplier.
Correct.
So the tribunal held that how you are concerned.
Correct.
If the tax has been paid, no.
Correct.
You are giving credit to the tax amount.
Correct.
As long as you recovered the tax, why you are putting this condition?
Correct. Correct.
So they have said, are you saying that tax has not been paid by the supplier?
Correct.
Which they could not. So
Correct.
this has been upheld by Rajasthan High Court also.
Correct.
I think that same thing, the litigation is going to be bound to increase.
Correct.
With all these conditions.
Correct.
But तो क्या है हमको तो वही है कि हम होंगे कामयाब.
Correct, got it.
लड़ते जाना है.
Sir, one more thing on this, sir. This 16.4 provision lays down the condition that you must avail the credit before end of the return filing of September following the year. So that is a deadline for availing the credit. So
That's
now
right.
within the statute, can you say there is a contrary provision? One is section 16(2) with one condition you take only after 2A it is appearing in. Second provision with section 16(4) say don't take credit after September. So where I will go? So when can we argue that way? When there is a contradiction, whichever is a beneficial to the at the end of the day, SENVET is a beneficial provision for the recipient. And once the time limit is gone, you cannot avail. So thereby he should avail it in the month of at least in September.
That's right. I'm saying that's what I said in my lecture also, that you must avail in September.
Yeah.
But ultimately you'll have to prove that 2A, it is getting reflected in 2A.
Yeah, fine.
So say we are in September 22.
Yeah.
Okay. September 22, we have to take a call whether I should take the credit for some of the suppliers who have not uploaded, or I should not take the credit.
Okay.
If I am confident that the suppliers will upload the credit, maybe in November, maybe in December, maybe in January,
Yeah.
then I will do that.
Correct.
So, I mean, after my following also, suppose you have chosen 25 suppliers will upload. Ho sakta hai, ek do supplier may not upload.
Correct.
So to that extent, you will be ready with the 18% interest also. Then you suo moto, I mean, internally you fix a deadline that by March 23, I will follow up. And if person are not reflecting, I will reverse the credit with 18% interest.
Absolutely. But sir, in that case, and one scrupulous guy, suppose he has missed out the credit, really has missed out. And in that case, if there is a default, he will say, in order to section 16 prevents me, but 16.4 prevents me, but I need to comply 16.2. So why September? Even if I have taken in March, I am trying to comply 16.2. Can you argue that way in other way around?
Different, what mushkil hai, because there what the court has held is it's not a fundamental right.
Achha, okay.
Benefit given to you, so benefit can always be put a restriction.
Yeah, got it.
Right, enshrined in the constitution.
Correct.
Difficult to argue that restrictions you will not be able to comply.
Correct. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Keval, you can continue.
Yeah. Sir, one question which I had, the explanation which is put to the definition of supply, ignoring the decisions by the courts. Now, how far that will be valid? Because courts are not the creators of the statute. They are through the constitution.
Main value will be that under constitution, concept of mutuality is still not done away with. That's why I read out 32 and 33 para.
Correct.
The first you allow this is the general law concept. So if you want to do away with general law concept, mutuality is not given in any taxing statute. It is not arising from a tax. This is a general law concept. So if you want to do away with your constitution, first should deny. Okay, look, I am not in our country. This is not acceptable, or for this purpose is not acceptable. Now, moment the court has held that general mutuality concept is there, then this provision, whether it succeed or not, is a question. Is a big question. All that will take a lot of time, and the nature of club or association is such a organization that no chairman, and it keeps on changing, no chairman and secretary will ever try to take risk of these things. That's a practical difficulty. But legally, if you feel, you can very well challenge this.
Atul bhai, most of the questions I have taken, Deepali ma'am wants to take up a question. Should I allow her to speak?
Yeah. Later.
Deepali ma'am, if you can unmute yourself and take up the question.
Yeah, good evening, sir. It was a very pleasant hearing you. I mean, all of my doubts are cleared. Just two questions. The first one is relating to the exports proceedings. Suppose I have exported the goods. The goods are returned back. I have re-imported the goods. I have paid the import IGST. In this case, can we say that the export proceedings are not realized and Rule 96B will hit? And I have to pay back the refund.
No. In this case, IGST will not be denied to you, because you are, while importing, you must have paid the IGST.
No, I'm talking about the IGST refund which I have claimed when I had made the exports.
See, while re-importing, if you read the re-import notification, they permit you to re-import only when the benefit which you have taken are returned back by you.
Okay.
So they are levying IGST into equivalent this thing what refund you have taken.
Okay, but and then at the same time I'm taking the credit also, no, of that IGST of the re-import.
So that See that anyway, once you are refunding back the money, whatever you have paid through credit, you will again take back, no? In refund also same thing will happen. Your
Right.
credit is not going to be wasted.
Okay.
Encashment of credit will be denied. See, in unutilized credit, what happens? The credit will remain with you. That's what I mentioned. In case suppose you are not paid a IGST, you would have gone for unutilized credit.
Correct.
And unutilized credit, what you do? They will deny you the unutilized credit refund. They cannot deny you the credit itself. The credit will remain with you.
Right.
All that will happen is the refund, the credit encashment will not be permitted.
Okay. Okay.
So
And what if I have made the exports with IGST paid and claim the IGST from the customs?
that's what I'm saying. Once you return back the money to the custom, you can take back that credit.
Okay.
Because assuming you are a export under bond, nobody wants to demand duty from you.
Right.
Then credit would have remained with you.
Right.
You are by payment of IGST, you are trying to encash that credit.
Correct.
The government is denying you the encashment, not the credit.
Okay.
You follow my point?
Okay. Okay.
The credit will not be denied. Credit is validly taken.
Right. 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 But the refund in cash will be denied.
That's right. That's right.
And if already I have got the refund, then I have to repay it back.
Yeah, repaid back. See, once you are importing, no, the payment of custom duty is equivalent to repayment.
Acha. Okay. Okay.
Payment of custom duty, the CVD or IGST which you are paying is equal to refund. Repayment.
Okay. Okay.
Again, you don't have to pay again.
Okay. Okay. Got the point. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And the second question is that is also related to exports only. That now I am going for that my warehousing stuffing. So I raise an invoice. I give the invoice to the customs. They give permission and for that warehousing stuffing for that booking release order. Okay. Somehow the shipment gets delayed. So on the same invoice, they issue me a booking release order at a later date. So suppose my first invoice was on 5th February. Now, and that day now I am getting the booking release order on 11th of February. So now what will happen that on 11th of February, I will be issuing my e-invoice. Okay. So now in that e-invoice, I am not going to issue a new separate invoice. Invoice is old only 5th February because on that same invoice number, I am getting a booking release order. So when I am issuing an e-invoice on 11th of February, in that I have to mention the document date and document number of 5th February. So that is perfectly okay, right?
Yeah, yeah. That moment you are putting an invoice to the portal, portal takes that date. Other date they will not verify that you are giving a booking release order of 5th or booking release order of 7th or this thing. That portal is not concerned. So e-invoice, which when you try to upload it in the invoicing system, if you are doing on 11th, there is no problem.
No, but my shipping bill will be of 5th February.
Doesn't matter. Shipping bill can always predate the invoice, no?
Okay. Okay.
Mr.
Yeah, that's a
Dinesh
portal
Vitlani,
invoice.
I am
Which you are getting.
Yes, Kevin?
Portal,
No.
portal reference number which you are getting on 11th.
Okay. Yes, correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dinesh Vitlani, sir, you had some question. If you can just unmute yourself. Mr. Nishant Mundada, if you can just unmute yourself.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nishant.
So, sir, my query was with the recent amendment or the proposed amendment in 16.2 AA, which says that the date you can avail the credit only when it is furnished by the supplier to you and communicated. So, say for example, for the month of April 2021. So what would be the date of availment? Is date of availment the, say for example, 1st May or 11th May 2021? Or is it 30th April to 2022.
See, no. When you are availing a credit, when you are filing a 3B. See, you are filing 3, you will be filing 3B by 20th of the month of May.
Yes.
Right? Now, before that,
Yes.
you will get 2A. Before that, you will get 2A because by 10th, they have to upload the invoice. So the 2A will come to you by 12th or 13th.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Correct.
Now, on that, after 13, you whatever is reflected in 2A, you can take the credit.
Yes, sir.
That is what the law says. And your availment will be by when you file the return on 3B.
So for the month of April, I will avail the credit in May 2021.
Naturally, that availment is that. That another point is there that availment is deemed to have been made when I made the entries in the books of account. That itself is a heavily litigated area. We have some places we have succeeded, but by and large, department feels availment is on 20th, and we also feel it's 20th. One should comply with that.